Chicago, Illinois, 1929. The Windy City. It's called this for one of two reasons: the weather it lives with, or the sometimes turbulent politics it deals with. Chicago became a city on March 4th, 1837. Here are some pictures of what Chicago looked like during 1929. Chicago was a growing and thriving city to be in. Population was about 3 million people. The Native Americans, being the Potawatomis, gave Chicago its name. The name often means wild leek, wild onion, or wild garlic. The mayor of Chicago in 1929 was this man seen in this picture, Mayor William Hale Thompson. The mayor and the mob boss, Al Capone, would become well acquainted with each other. Thereby, Al Capone most of the time kept law enforcement at a distance from him. Chicago Police Chief in 1929 was James Gleason, seen here in this picture. The chief would be on the police force for 45 years before he would retire. Chicago was a city, for the most part, a great place to be in during the 1920s, except for when the Volstead Act, or Prohibition Act as it was better known as, passed. It appears the crime rate went high. Bootlegging was very popular. A bottle of booze would easily sell for $20 a bottle. Illegal gambling popped up underground as well. Illegal prostitution was on the rise during this time also. America is voted dry by the 66th Congress. The bill is known as the Prohibition Act, or the Volstead Act, passed by Congress on October 28, 1919. It becomes the 18th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. The famous evangelist Billy Sunday preached against drinking alcohol and supported the Prohibition Bill as well. The Prohibition Bill was introduced to Congress by this man seen here in this picture, Congressman Andrew Volstead, Republican from Minnesota. Soon, the alcohol would be poured out onto the streets everywhere in America. The Bureau of Prohibition was in charge of confiscating and destroying illegal alcohol they found. It appeared for a while between 1919 and 1993, for a total of some 14 years. Evangelist Billy Sunday had helped America become sober. Raid after raid, the Prohibition Bureau destroyed illegal alcohol anywhere they found it. The definition of the Prohibition Bill would define it as the following: a ban on the sale, production, importation, and transportation of alcoholic beverages would be in place. This would be the 18th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. A definition of an amendment is this: a minor change in a document and or an article added to the U.S. Constitution. President Woodrow Wilson was the 28th President of the United States when the Prohibition Bill was made law. While Wilson vetoed the bill, Congress overrode it to pass it. Chicago and America itself appeared it would sober up at last. Life continued on as what appeared to be normal as seen in this picture here in Chicago. Men would still line up to get a ticket and a good seat at Wrigley Stadium to watch baseball. Fashions would be the talk of the day as well. Hotels would be a popular place to visit like this one seen in this picture. A good education was pursued by many people. It would appear Chicago and the rest of America would be sobered up and stay that way. But the big question would be this: how long would this last? Along with the Prohibition era came a life of those who loved to party all the time. Fancy cars like these help people to get around and enjoy life more. Along with Louis Armstrong came the jazz era as well during the 1920s. People would go out to see a movie that could possibly only cost 25 cents to see. But along with peacetime and prosperity came the following as well. Gangsters like these guys seen in this picture. Gangsters wanted a piece of the pie as well. Gangsters belonged to a group of other people better known as the mob. Both young and old, men and women, all who wanted to be a part of this lifestyle got involved. Then came along the man in the next picture. Alfonso Gabriel Capone, born on January 17, 1899, born in Brooklyn, New York. His Italian mother's name was Teresa Capone. Religion, Roman Catholic. Alfonso Capone attended a Catholic school like this one in New York City where he grew up in. One could possibly say that Al Capone's criminal career started early in life. At the age of 11 years old, Capone struck a teacher and he was expelled from school. At the age of 18, Capone had a job as a bouncer in a Harvard Inn nightclub and would have been located somewhere along this boardwalk. It was here in 1917 when Capone insulted Frankie Galuccio's female state sister and that got him his scars. Frank Galuccio, as seen in this picture, was the man who attacked Capone with a knife, cutting Capone's face 3 times. Galuccio did this because Capone insulted this man's state sister and defended her. One could clearly see the 3 knife marks on Al Capone's face here. It took some 80 stitches to close the wounds, and these wounds would be permanent. Capone never retaliated Galuccio for giving him these scars. Capone's nickname would now be called Scarface. At the age of 20 years old, Al Capone joined this gang in New York City. Capone's life with organized crime would begin here. It would be this man, who was Paul Kelly, who founded the 5 Points Gang. Kelly would eventually recruit 2 famous gangsters, Johnny Torrio and Al Capone. 5 Points Gang's headquarters is located here at this place called the New Brighton Little Naples Cafe. Paul Kelly along with Johnny Torrio are seen here in this picture walking together. These 2, along with some other gang members, would make an unfriendly house call. One day, Paul Kelly was sitting in a restaurant eating his dinner. His rivalry gang opened fire upon the restaurant as they tried to take him out. Eventually, Kelly realized it was time for him to retire, and so he turned the power over to the next man in charge. Gangster Johnny Torrio. Torrio would eventually become a mentor for the man in the next picture. Alfonso Gabriel Capone. Capone considered Torrio to be his mentor. He would be transferred to Chicago by Torrio, become the bodyguard for Chicago outfit founder and boss, Big Jim Colosio. He was assassinated on May 11, 1920 from multiple gunshot wounds, most likely because he was opposed to a bootlegging operation. Mob boss Johnny Torrio would eventually replace Big Jim with a man in the next picture to be the boss. Alfonso Gabriel Capone. Gangster, bootlegger, racketeer, and mob boss of the Chicago outfit. Capone's headquarters would be located here at this hotel in Chicago, Lexington Hotel, 2135 South Michigan Avenue from 1928 to 1938, north side of Chicago. Capone would occupy the 4th and 5th floor for the Chicago outfit headquarters. Board meetings would be held here and other activities as well. While relaxing with a game of golf seen here in this picture, he and his men would talk business in a leisurely way. Many secret passageways and a vault for Capone's special items would be kept here. Al Capone is sitting down with his family. His associates are standing up behind him. He would marry his spouse, May Coughlin Capone, at the age of 19. At the age of 20 years old, the couple would have a son, Albert Francis Sonny Capone. Here Sonny is seen with his father at Wrigley Field talking with a Cubs player, Gabby Hartman. It appears that Sonny never got involved with the gang lifestyle. The Capones would live in the house here in Chicago, 7244 Prairie Avenue, St. Columbus Catholic Church. The Capones attended the Catholic Church as seen in this picture on the south side of Chicago. Now Al Capone would control most of Chicago from 1920 to 1933. However, the law would eventually catch up with Al Capone during his reign. For the most part, the Prohibition era was a prosperous one, with one big party after another. Life as a gangster would still be one of violence and death. At first, Al Capone looked as a modern-day Robin Hood. He'd help the homeless and the unemployed, opening up soup kitchens like this one. He would help those losing their homes to keep them. Boy, I sure could use another drink. Sister, don't take another sip out of that poison. Why not, preacher? It helps me to relax after a long, hard day. Because, sister, it's the serpent's poison. It will come back to bite you. But, preacher, it's no different than someone not paying their own taxes. Ah, sister, that is true also. Not paying your own taxes will come back to bite you too. Al Capone was at first popular for his Robin Hood likeness of helping the poor. His popular cigar smoking made him popular as well. Capone would be indirectly accused of having some 350 people killed, but he would never be convicted of murder. Towards the end of the 1920s, people in America and Chicago were getting weary of Al Capone and all the other gangsters. People were getting tired of the gangsters' gun battles. People were getting tired of the prohibition law and began to protest against it. Here one can see a picture of people protesting the need for their beer. It would become increasingly evident towards the end of Prohibition it would come to an end soon. Protests would grow louder and louder against Prohibition. Al Capone was sitting down having lunch at the Hawthorne restaurant seen here in this picture. 8 motor vehicles drove around, and in a quiet, eerie moment, they began firing at and inside the restaurant. One of the Northside gang members seen here in this picture got out of his car and with his Tommy machine gun opened fire at the restaurant. Capone would make a quick exit out the back door. Take note of the title of the movie being shown on the theater announcement in the background. Capone and Moran were arch enemies. These two men couldn't stand each other. A bitter Cold War broke out between the North Gang and the Chicago outfit. The camel's back was finally broke when Moran had 2 loyal Union bosses to Capone killed. Al Capone wanted his arch enemy taken out. So his Chicago outfit gang members began to plot a way to do it. He wanted them to take care of the boss of the North Side gang seen in the next picture. George Bugs Moran, born April 21st, 1893 in St. Paul, Minnesota, nationality, Irish American, mob boss, gangster, bootlegger. Little did Al Capone realize that he would become America's public enemy #1. President Herbert Hoover, 31st President of the United States. Hoover contacted the Treasury Department and wanted them to find a way to put Al Capone behind bars. Hoover had conceded that Capone was a pest in the country and it was time to take action. Capone's men would watch the garage where the Northside Gang did their business from. The men would keep an aerial view of the activities at the garage seen here below. Meanwhile, Capone would conveniently make an alibi by staying at his Palm Island home in Florida. Hey, life is good. Secretary of Treasury Andrew Mellon contacts Special Agent Frank Wilson and instructs him of his concerning Capone. I want that man Capone in jail. Special Agent Frank Wilson, 1886 to 1970, joined the U.S. Treasury Department in 1920. Was later transferred to the enforcement branch of the IRS. United States Treasury Department, 1920. Special Agent Wilson set up his office at the Chicago Post Office with some of the other men who joined him in Al Capone's investigation. Meanwhile, Capone's men would keep a watchful eye out on Moran's activities at this garage-like warehouse. As this was going on, Wilson was able to infiltrate Capone's outfit with his own men. Finally, on February 14, 1929, Capone calls his men on the phone from his home in Miami, Florida, and orders the hit. February 14, 1929, 2122 North Clark Street, Chicago, Illinois. Some cars pull up alongside of the warehouse here. A neighborhood German Shepherd dog begins to bark loudly. Men entered the warehouse under the disguise of the police. Moran's men believed they were being busted. Failing to check out their real identity, these 7 men complied with the hands up facing the wall. Capone's men, realizing they had deceived Moran's men, opened fire upon them, killing them in a massacre-style shooting. However, the number 1 target is missing, Johnny Bugs Moran. Seven of Bugs Moran's men are killed by Al Capone's men. Bugs Moran was late getting to the meeting. Witnessed Capone's men enter and leaving the warehouse. He witnessed this from his car. As seen by Capone's men, says only Capone could order such a hit. It was the woman who owned a barking dog who sent her daughter out to check on what was happening at the warehouse. It was her daughter who made the gruesome discovery, and the real police were called. The Chicago police arrive at the scene and still find Frank Gurensberg still conscious after being shot 14 times. Chicago police try to interview Frank while he was still alive. Frank, who shot you? No one shot me. Gangster Frank Gurensberg, October 11th, 1892 to February 14th, 1929, Northside gang member. Died at the hospital 3 hours later after being interviewed by Chicago police. His brother Peter was also killed in this massacre. Chicago police are seen here in this picture removing Moran's dead men from the scene of the crime. The crime makes the news headline. Frank and Peter Gurensberg had their funerals, and Bugs Moran believes only Al Capone could have ordered this hit. Meanwhile, Special Agent Frank Wilson is on to this man right here in this picture, Edward J. O'Hare. Al Capone's bookkeeper, who turns over Capone's records of accounting showing no income tax was paid. Al Capone catches on to who Wilson is and what he has been doing. He orders a hit on Special Agent Frank Wilson. But it is his former mob boss, Johnny Torrio, who tells Capone to call off the hit. This makes Capone more nervous now. In May 1929, Al Capone is picked up by police in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. Al Capone is seen here in this mugshot of him at last. Capone will spend 9 months in prison. Eastern State Penitentiary, Fairmont, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Al Capone at first lived as lavishly as he could while in prison. Capone would have inmates join him watching TV in a cell seen here in this picture. He would even use the warden's phone in his office to make long-distance phone calls. Basically, prison time for Capone was just a leisurely pastime. Finally, at last, Special Agent Frank Wilson, seen here with the prosecutor George E. O. Johnson, seated down, is ready to try Al Capone. Al Capone is ordered to appear in court for his tax evasion trial, and is seen here arriving at court. Al Capone appears in court before the judge, as seen here in this picture. 20 counts of crimes are charged against him. Some 68 of his men are also charged with income tax evasion as well. The big question for Al Capone by the prosecutor was this: how can Mr. Capone afford all these things he has if he has no income? Al Capone's jury, as seen here in this picture, with the big question in mind and one that Al Capone himself could not answer, the jury could only do one thing. United States Penitentiary, Atlanta, Georgia. Al Capone was supposed to serve 11 years here at this prison. However, officials fear Capone to try to live a lavish lifestyle here like he did at the last prison. So, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, off the coast of San Francisco, California. Eventually, Capone's mental health deteriorated and his syphilis got worse. Capone was paroled on November 16, 1939, and sent to his home in Palm Island, Florida. In 1929, the stock market crashed, and so did Al Capone's reign as top mob boss of Chicago came to an end as well at the age of 33. Capone died in his Florida home at the age of 48. Prohibition ends in 1933 along with the gangster-style living as well that happened during the Roaring '20s. Man, after watching that long show, I sure could use another drink. Amen, sister. Me too.